Hi everybody, welcome back. Tony again with Shinsho Yoga, and today we're going to continue with a bit of a short series here I'm doing on lunges. So last video I talked about Anjayasana, low lunge, and if you haven't watched that, I will put a link to it here so you can go back to that, because I'm going to build off that video into this one. So today I want to work on the alternate low lunge, or sometimes referred to as a runner's lunge, where Anjayasana we are going to be bringing our back leg down, whichever leg is our back leg, down before rising up with the arms above the head. In the runner's lunge, we're going to stay on the back foot. We're going to stay on the ball of the back foot. But the structure of the lunge is still similar in that the energy of the back leg going back and the hips going forward, the hips being square, the length that we get through the lifting of the crown, the sinking of the tailbone, the shoulders drawing down but the arms going up, that same counterbalancing, counter energy, counter posing that we do in Anjayasana is the same that we do in our runner's lunge. The difference being there's a bit of a balance involved in this one, because we're not going to be with the top of the foot down and shin down and knee down on the mat. You're going to be on the ball of the foot. So there is going to be a bit of a balance issue here. Now, this is where the squaring of the hips that I talked about in the last video is very important. Again, one of the most common mistakes in a lunge, and also the warriors, is people often will align, right, bringing their feet in line with each other. Now in Warrior 2, there is a lining up of the heel and the instep. The heel of the front foot and the instep of the back foot. But in Warrior 1, or any of the lunges, you want the hips square. So you want a bit of a wide stance on this. Often people do this because many yoga teachers, most yoga teachers are women in the West, and they generally come from a background of either dance or gymnastics. And in dance and in gymnastics, there's an aesthetic, right? You want the heels in line, the legs in line. There's a certain look. Yoga isn't dance. Yoga is not gymnastics. You want the hips forward in this, especially in these low lunge or the high lunge, right? And the runner's lunge or the high lunge, because of that balance on that back foot. The squaring of the hips is going to give you a bit of a wider stance, and it's going to be easy for you, most people, to maintain that height on that, right? To be able to rise up and maintain it. Where if you're in line, now your balance is like on a balance beam, right? One way or the other. So if you don't have good balance, or you're distracted by what's going on in the class and you look around, you're going to go in those directions. Where if the hips, the legs are hip distance apart, you have a bit of a wider stance, you are going to be much more sure in your posture. So the runner's lunge isn't going to be that much different than Anjayasana height-wise, right? We're going to be down lower. But in this one, we don't rise up with the arms above the head, and we don't take the back of the leg down. We stay in more of a prone stance. But again, the energy is still similar. We're not looking to collapse down into the stance. We're going to be doing the same thing in any one. We want the crown to lift and the tailbone to sink. Albeit we're not standing, right? We are in this prone position. It is still a similar feel. Right? So let me get into that and demonstrate it for today. And I'm going to demonstrate it from forward fold, Uttanasana, because that's the majority of the time you're probably going to come from this. So in our forward fold, right? Your hips, feet generally about hip distance apart. Of course, forward fold, bend the knees as you need to, allow everything to spill forward. And I'm going to use my left foot for demonstration purposes. Teacher's probably going to ask you to plant your hands and step the leg back. So I'm going to step my left leg back. You're going to stay tall on the ball of the foot, right? I'm going to make sure my hips are square here. I don't want this, where this is in line, because then my hips torque off this way. Trying to keep them this way, now my knee goes out this way, right? what we want is a square hip, right? And again, we also want that square to the front knee, just as we do in our Anjayasana. We're going to stay tall on the fingertips. People do it differently. Some people come here. I like to come here for some support. And then sinking into that hip, allow the head to raise, allow the shoulders to draw back. Again, you're still going to want that crown to lift and the tailbone to sink as best as you can. But you're going to be driving the heel of the back foot back, right? Try to avoid, this, where you're kind of hanging in here. Press that heel back. Press it back and drive the hip forward. So the hip comes forward, the heel goes back, the head comes up, let the shoulders relax down, and breathe. Other side, same thing. Hands down. Stepping, leg back, squaring of the hip. Allow that heel to drive back. And as that drives back, your hips come forward. Tall on the fingertips. Do it a little differently this time. Lift the head, eyes forward. And then sometimes I'll even move that foot a little bit more forward so I can really sink those hips. Drive that leg back. So, as with all lunges, hips move forward, right? But energy of the back leg goes back. Back leg goes back, hips go forward, shoulders roll back, head is going to lift. Even in this runner's lunge, there's still going to be a lifting of the crown and a sinking of the tailbone, albeit we are not straight up, we're more angled. You still want to allow the tailbone to drop. It's going to come under you as those hips move forward. That head's going to lift. And we'll breathe. Lunge, as I had mentioned in the prior video, really going to feel it in the inside of the legs. So the adductors are really going to feel it in there. So if they're not open, you're going to be a little challenged with it, but that's okay. So what the recommendation I would give on it is when you go through this, your lunges, always attempt to deepen the posture as you breathe. Right? Even if it's a very small amount. Just allow yourself to sink into it and breathe. Again, the most important thing in this is the following of the breath. How good you do the posture that day is inconsequential. Put in an honest effort. Do the best you can for your body that day. Deepen as your body allows for that day. And breathe. And as your thoughts arise, acknowledge them. Allow them to pass by. Return to the breath. Time and time again. That's the most important part of the practice. The stilling of the mind. This is a means to an end. It's a process. Right? Breathe. Follow the breath. Allow the thoughts to pass by. If you do that in the class, you've done yoga. So, that's our runner's lunge for today. Next video I think I'm going to do is the high lunge. So, again, I would suggest if you're watching one of them to watch all three. This way you can see how they all coordinate and see the similarities and differences between them. So, thanks for watching. Namaste.